In the next episode of Game of Thrones, Jaime Lannister versus the Joker. Game of Thrones is finally back on air. Season 7 has begun, and it has been the longest wait we've had to endure during 2 seasons. It has been a long and bitter winter, but now we are finally back, and the war for the Seven Kingdoms seems to be coming to an end. Who will be the ultimate victor? The series started off with a cold opening of Walder Frey addressing all the other Freys who helped him plan and execute the Red Wedding, which of course, if you remember, was where Robb Stark and Catelyn were murdered. You may be wondering, what's Walder Frey doing alive? We saw Arya kill him at the end of the last season. It turns out it was Arya. She had done the faceless mask thing and had been posing as Walder Frey this whole time. She collected all the other Freys together and poisoned them, and now they're all dead. It really looks like House Frey has been completely extinguished. She didn't murder the women, good of her, but how did she know they weren't involved? But still, it looks like House Frey has been destroyed utterly. They were the closest allies of the Lannisters at the end of the last season, but as Jaime says later in the episode, they can't rely on them anymore. They're gone. God knows if this is how it will go down in the books. Probably not. Seemed a bit too easy and wrapped up. But still, you know, as far as the show goes, Arya has a revenge. The Starks have been avenged. Winter has come for them. And what a badass scene it was. I mean, really brilliant stuff. As I say, it did seem all a bit, you know, easy that Arya got everyone. You're telling me not one Frey was late, not one Frey was easing off the booze, not one Frey just couldn't be bothered to go. Still, as far as this show goes, it seems like the Freys are toast. The epic opening credits open with the na-na-na-na-na-na. You know how that goes. Oh, it was so great to have it back again. I got goosebumps on my arm. It was, just so good to see it again. Yeah, did you notice that Winterfell, now it's back in control of the Starks, has the Stark sigil again and no longer the Boltons? So that's good for the Stark loyalists. And then our first scene post-opening was of the army of the dead coming towards us, and I thought that was a cracking scene. I loved how there was the snow and the mist began to rise, and then you could just faintly see a figure off in the distance, and then it became closer and closer, and you realised it was a White Walker followed by an army of Whites, also revealing they have at least a couple of giants with them. I don't know if that giant was meant to be 1-1, the giant that Ramsay finished off in the Battle of the Bastards. I don't think it was. It was missing an eye, and I don't recall 1-1 ever losing an eye in the show, so it could well have been another giant. But as we saw, they've got a few. And as we saw when Mance Rayder attacked the wall, giants were excellent when it came to trying to overcome the wall and the Night's Watch defences. So if the army of the dead has got giants, then that could be really bad for everyone in Westeros. I wonder if they've also got undead mammoths. They've got undead horses. What about undead mammoths? There are also other creatures that have been mentioned in the series, but we haven't actually seen, like giant ice spiders. Am I the only one who's, since season 1, since old Nan's story, is dying to see giant ice spiders? I mean, yes, the CGI budget is already through the roof, but I would like to see at least one ice spider before the series is over. And, of course, the big question we're all wondering is, could it be possible, if one of Daenerys' dragons is killed, could the White Walkers resurrect it as an ice dragon? That would be crazy. How do we know they haven't already got ice dragons? What if one of the old Targaryen dragons was killed hundreds of years ago and the Whites resurrected it for later use in their own army? I mean, how cool would that be to see an ice dragon? Then we cut to just by the wall. Meera and Bran finally have made it back to civilization. The gate lifted up, and Dolorous Edd, who, if you remember, was named acting Commander of the Night's Watch by Jon Snow when he left, sees them, and they go, it's Meera and Bran Stark, we need help. And he goes, well, how do I know you're Meera and Bran Stark? This isn't the 21st century, we don't have internet, I don't know what you look like. And they answer that question by having Bran say something mysterious, which apparently proves he's Bran. Then we return to Winterfell, where a big debate was going on. Jon, the newly crowned king of the North, was putting out plan of attack for when the Whites come. Sansa was there with him, and Davos, who didn't say anything, but he was there. And there was a nice kind of clash between Jon and Sansa. Jon offered mercy to the houses that betrayed him in the Battle of the Bastards, where Sansa, she wasn't so forgiving. And I think that was an interesting thing. Jon, despite having been killed and resurrected, he's still a pretty merciful guy, pretty good guy. But Sansa, she's been around some real assholes since season 1. She spent all that time in King's Landing, full of liars and, you know, murderers, people like Cersei and Littlefinger. And then she got sold off to the Boltons, and there she had to endure the likes of Ramsay. And, you know, she as Jon says, he says, you know, you're starting to sound like Cersei. And Sansa says, I learned a lot from her. And, you know, as terrible as these people are, they knew how to play the Game of Thrones. And this is something Sansa has realised. Ned Stark, Robb Stark, great guys, but, you know, they let their honour have too much sway in their decisions, and it got them killed. And I think Sansa's finally recognised sometimes you've got to be a bit of a dickhead to get ahead in life. And, you know, I thought it was interesting, that clash between her and Jon. It doesn't seem like too much of a big deal at the moment, but, you know, I wonder if this tension could lead to something big. Littlefinger noticed, and I wonder if he might, you know, try to use this to drive a wedge between Jon and Sansa. Hopefully not, because they've both been through enough, and I want Littlefinger to get his. But, you know, I mean, there's a lot to lose at this point. Then we go down to King's Landing, where Cersei has got a big map of Westeros painted on the floor. I think she might be thinking about having some big games of Risk. I played some Game of Thrones Risk. It's a lot of fun. I can see why she'd want to do that. But then Jaime comes along and, you know, basically tells Cersei they don't have any allies left. She's not Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. She's Queen of the Three Kingdoms at best. Pretty much everybody would like to see the Lannisters get fucked up at this point. Dorne hates them. The North obviously hates them. The Tyrells hate them. I mean, they're really running low on allies at this point. They had the phrase, but they've since discovered Arya's killed all of those. So, you know, it looks like they're kind of backed into a corner at the moment. They've got the capital, arguably the best position to have in Westeros, but that's not everything. If everyone decides they want to see the Lannisters fall, it could well happen. However, Cersei has a trump card in the shape of Euron Greyjoy, who has gathered his fleet that he somehow built on an island with no trees, and has sailed to King's Landing and offered his services to Cersei. All he asked in return, though, was that she marry him. Did you see the look on Jaime's face when he said that? Oh, sour, sour. I mean, could you imagine those two literally and metaphorically getting into bed together? I mean, that's just mixing crazy with batshit crazy. I mean, good God. The shit that would happen under a rule of Euron and Cersei. And Jaime was looking very much like a third wheel there. I want him to just F off up north, join Tyrion, and, you know, say sorry to Dany for killing her dad, and hopefully, you know, joining with her. But, you know, we don't often get happy endings in Game of Thrones. But still, Cersei denied Euron's proposal for marriage, and he said he would change her mind by getting her a gift. Now, I very much doubt that that's going to be a ring or a necklace. I think what he means is he's going to get her someone. Now, a lot of people are speculating it could be Tyrion. Maybe Euron will kidnap Tyrion. She definitely hates him. She wants revenge on him. She would certainly be indebted to anyone who manages to get their hands on Tyrion. Or maybe it could be the Sand Snakes and Ellaria Sand, who was responsible for killing Myrcella and Dorne. Now, if he could get hold of them and present them to Cersei, they would be royally fucked. I mean, Cersei is not the kindest person at the best of times. What do you imagine she would do to somebody who killed one of her children? Now, that's what I think. I think Euron's going to go get the Sand Snakes, and if he does, then they are screwed. And Cersei will probably agree to marry him for that. As I say, that would be one hell of a combination. It would be hugely entertaining to watch, but you know, it would look pretty bad for Jaime and the rest of Westeros. I'd like to say, before I continue, Euron's actor, in the last season, I feel like he didn't really get much of a role. I mean, he was in it, but I don't know, Euron's so cool in the books. I was a bit disappointed with how they treated him in the show. However, he got more chance to shine in that scene, and I definitely enjoyed him a lot more. He had a bit of the kind of crazy, dark timeline Jack Sparrow thing going on. I kind of liked the look of him. He sort of had that pirate swag, you know. Wasn't overly impressed with Cersei in the Iron Throne. He was just like, look, I've got what you need, let's team together. So, yeah, I hope he really becomes a worthy villain in this season of Game of Thrones. And from what we saw, I think he's certainly on his way. Then we went over to the Citadel, where Samwell Tarly is studying to become a maester, and he's working from the bottom up. He's literally having to clean out toilets and people's chamber pots filled with shit. We got a nice shit montage there. I mean, it was a good montage, but it was about shit, a shit-tage, if you will. And, you know, as we all know, when you start a new job, you have to work from the bottom up. You have to do some things you don't like. Hopefully, that doesn't include literally having to clean up shit, but it's what Sam's having to do in return for all this knowledge he's going to get. While he's there, he's trying to learn as much about the White Walkers as possible to help Jono out. And he comes across an area of the library that's restricted. And he wants to get in there, and you know, he knows there's going to be valuable information there, but he's not allowed in because he's not a proper maester yet. So, a bit like Harry Potter, he sneaks in there, nicks the keys, gets in there, steals a few books. I don't know why they didn't chain those books up, but they chained all the other books up. I mean, you'd think they'd do that, but they didn't. And so he stole them. And he's discovered that Dragonstone, Stannis' former seat, and the place that Daenerys arrives at the end of the episode, has a gold mine of dragonglass, obsidian, below it. And that could be used to kill White Walkers. And if he can get that to Jon, Jon can get his hands on it, they'll have a fighting chance against the White Walkers. I thought that was a really great part of the episode. I think the actor that plays Sam has done a fantastic job, just like how I imagined him in the books. And we got to see a sneak peek of Jorah Mormont, who appears to be in a kind of sanitarium, some kind of quarantine area, where people with deadly diseases are locked away. It looks pretty bad for him. The greyscale's gone all up his arm. Is he going to survive? I mean, one would think not, given that it's been stated that if anyone survives greyscale, it's children, and even they're left deformed. However, Jorah Mormont, he's obviously a very main character. Hopefully he will find a cure. When Sam opened that book up, all about Dragonglass, and you saw the page that showed that Valyrian steel dagger that was used by the Catspaw to try and kill Bran in Season 1, remember that? There, if you look at the right on the other page, so people have noticed that there's a passage that talks about Dragonglass supposedly being able to cure diseases. I wonder if that will play into curing Jorah somehow. Maybe stabbing him with Dragonglass will cure him. Perhaps he'll go full grayscale, attack Sam, and then someone will stab him with perhaps some obsidian or something, and maybe that will return him to his usual form. Who knows? But very interesting. The Children of the Forest did something similar to create the White Walkers, so it seems like there is some kind of magical properties to Dragonglass that can have big effects on people, and maybe could cure grayscale. Who knows? But certainly it looks like Jorah is running out of time. Then we cut back to the Wall, where Brienne is training up Podrick. It seems like he's becoming quite a competent fighter now. He was terrible when we first saw him, but you know, under Brienne's tutelage, he seems to be able to handle himself a lot better, although she's still kicking his ass. And then we saw Tormund admiring Brienne and says he'd love to have her beat the shit out of him. And I really like that, you know. Brienne, it said that she's still a maiden, if you get my drift, and in the books particularly she's meant to be very ugly and not very attractive. But Tormund doesn't care. He sees a strong woman and he wants to jump into bed with her. And I kind of feel like, despite the fact he's a wildling and she's a noble woman, they'd be a great match for each other, you know. She don't want to be with some dick who doesn't let her fight. And Tormund, being north of the Wall, born north of the Wall, he's not going to stop her from doing that. He'd encourage it, if anything. I kind of like like the idea of Tormund and Brienne getting together. I think with all the dark shit that's going on at the moment, perhaps a little romance subplot between her and Tormund could be quite good. And then we cut to possibly the most controversial scene in the episode. We see Arya heading down south, apparently to kill Cersei. And on the way down, she encounters some Lannister soldiers. Now, her experience with Lannister soldiers has been very bad in the past. They've all been massive dickheads. However, she encounters these Lannister soldiers, and they turn out to be nice as pie. They're the nicest guys in all of Westeros. And to top it off, one of them's played by Ed Sheeran. Also, nobody noticed that the other one was played by the actor who played the young kid in the excellent series This Is England, which you should definitely watch if you've not checked it out already. It's very dark, very gritty, more so than Game of Thrones, but very good as well. And as I say, Ed Sheeran being in the episode has kind of had a very mixed reception amongst fans. He got so much abuse apparently on Twitter, he deactivated his Twitter account for some time. I think he's back on now. I have to say, I wasn't a huge fan of the scene personally. I was watching the episode and I was really getting into Game of Thrones mode. I felt like I was in Westeros. It was so good to be back. I was so engrossed with the story. And then the problem is Ed Sheeran is such a famous person right now. And they did very little to disguise the fact it was Ed Sheeran. He didn't have any mud on his face or anything. He was just wearing some Lannister armour. He looked like Ed Sheeran, you know, and he seems like a really nice guy. Personally, I'm not hugely into his music, but, you know, I've got nothing against the guy. But I just found that when he appeared on screen, I just immediately went, oh, it's Ed Sheeran. It just ripped me out of the world of Game of Thrones and back into reality. And it was quite, I was just like, whoa, it was quite discombobulating. And you know, some idiots went as far as to go on Twitter and throw abuse at him. I thought his acting was fine. It was just that he's got such a recognisable face. I just, the whole time I was looking at him, I was like, is that Sheeran? Is that Sheeran? Is that Sheeran? I do have a theory that the song he was singing will be on the soundtrack for Game of Thrones. So if, like me, you enjoy the soundtrack, look out for that one. Yeah, I personally wasn't a huge fan of the scene just because it ripped me out of the atmosphere. However, I don't think that's Ed Sheeran's fault at all. I blame the showrunners, if anything. David Dan, like, you know, I know that people have had cameos in Game of Thrones in the past, and I don't have a problem with that. But the reason cameos in the past, I think, worked is because you really wouldn't have known it was anyone in particular unless you were looking out for it. Whereas in this one, I feel like you just couldn't help but think, oh, it's Ed Sheeran, there he is. You know, you know, I don't hate that he was in Game of Thrones. I just think they could have made it a little bit more subtle. But again, I feel sorry for the guy. He got such a backlash from it. Apparently, he is a big Game of Thrones fan and has been for years. So, you know, I don't think it was a case of him just trying to, you know, stick his nose in. You know, I think when he would have been propositioned with being in Game of Thrones, he'd love to do it. And I think if anyone wants Game of Thrones to be good, it's him, you know. So I think it was out of order, people throwing abuse at him, although I can understand why some people felt the scene was, you know, a bit off. But still, I mean, it really wasn't the end of the world. I felt it was a little bit heavy-handed with basically for the past few series has been a stone cold killer, and this scene was kind of showing her that, you know, even people when they're on different sides to you, they're not all bad. There are good people in the world. There's good in the bad, bad in the good, the whole yin yang, you know. And this scene had her encountering some Lannister soldiers who were just regular guys who were making their way in the world. And I thought it was a bit heavy the way, you know, they were the nicest guys ever. But, you know, it did its job. It gave Arya a bit of humanity. And at the end, where they all laughed, and she was like, yeah, I can hang out with these blokes. Will she go all the way to King's Landing to kill Cersei? I doubt it. There's been speculation she's going to go up north. I wonder if she might meet Melisandre again on her way down south, because last time they saw each other, Melisandre said they'd meet again. So I think where Melisandre was banished from the north, she's going to encounter Arya and convince her to go back up north where Jon Snow and Sansa are, and Bran will be shortly, so it'll be a big reunion for the Starks, and I look forward to seeing that for sure. Then we had what I think was the strongest scenes in the whole episode, and that was of Sandor Clegane, the Hound, and the Brotherhood Without Banners. I think Rory McCann, the actor for the Hound, has done a fantastic job with the character ever since season 1. I've been rooting for the Hound since then, and fingers crossed he'll stay alive until the end. I love how the Hound, when we were first introduced to him, he was just this hateful character, and he had the horrific burns, and he was so hateful, as Sansa once described him, just pure hate, and he says that's like the fuel that drives him. And yet, slowly but surely, we've seen him step into the light a little, from him trying to prevent the abuse Sansa suffered at the hands of Joffrey, to him trying to return Arya to the Starks, and then, you know, I feel like there was a real turning point for Clegane in this scene, where he buried the peasants who had starved to death. And that's very interesting. For those who didn't pick up on it, when he was travelling with Arya, they stayed with the father and his daughter, and in the end the Hound stole silver from them and said they don't need it, they'll be dead by winter. And winter's come, and with the Brotherhood Without Banners, he's returned to that farmhouse and found they are indeed dead. Possibly kind of due to him having stolen their silver, if they couldn't afford food, you know. And for the first time we see the Hound really feel guilty about his actions, you know. He's done some pretty terrible stuff in the past, and he saw their corpses and he went out and he buried them, which is a great nod to the gravedigger theory, of course. But I feel like it was a real turning point for Sandor Clegane. For some time now he's kind of had one foot in darkness, one foot in light. And that line he said when he said, "I'm sorry you're dead," that was such a perfect eulogy from the Hound. And I feel like that was him fully embracing that he can be a decent man. And that was him embracing the light. And I loved how Thoros, you know, didn't say anything, didn't correct his prayer that he got wrong. He just helped bury them. And I thought that was a fantastic scene. And, you know, so well done. And, of course, we saw we saw Clegane look into the fire, and he said he saw a mountain shaped like an arrowhead. I wonder if that refers to a mountain north of the wall, perhaps some kind of White Walker settlement, or it could refer to his brother, Gregor Clegane. Clegane Bowl confirmed, I hope. But yeah, that for me was one of the strongest scenes in the episode. I loved the style of it, the kind of dark blue colours. It really felt so cold there. And I'm really enjoying the Hound's journey, and I'm glad he's hooked up with the Brotherhood, and I really look forward to seeing where he goes from here as a character. Last scene of the episode, we finally got to see Daenerys and her crew land at Westeros at Dragonstone. Daenerys' childhood home, the place she's been wanting to return to her entire life, the place she wants to conquer. She's finally home. I love the way when she got off the boat, she put her hand down in the sand like, finally, I'm finally home. Here we go. We got to see some great shots of Dragonstone. I really liked them. We didn't get to see a lot of Dragonstone when Stannis was in charge, but we got some nice wide shots of the outside. Looks like a really great place. And then we go in, see all the dragon architecture, because of course that's the place where the Targaryens first landed, where they began their conquering of Westeros. And then Daenerys goes with Tyrion into the war room, and we see the great table that's fashioned to be a map of Westeros. And Emilia Clarke didn't have to learn very many lines that week. She looks at Tyrion and goes, "Shall we begin?" And it cuts to black. And what a great ending for the first episode. It's like, now we begin. We've been waiting for her to start conquering Westeros for years, and now it's finally going to start. Daenerys is on the warpath, and she's got a huge army to back her up, some great advisors like Varys and Tyrion, and you know, it really seems like there's no stopping us now. Personally, I thought this episode was an excellent start for the new series, and you know, I mean, it wasn't perfect, it certainly wasn't the best episode we've seen, but definitely a very strong start, a great opener, a great way to ease us back into the world of Westeros after a long absence, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to the rest of the series. Vala Morghulis.